What is the creepiest, cringiest thing someone has done to prove their love to you? Well, I just went on a date where a guy bought me a gift basket after meeting me once for an hour with a mug in it that said "I love you" a lot. He proceeded to talk about us having sex through the whole dinner and said, "You're really doing it for me right now." He jokingly said I could check and see if he had a boner under the table. There was more awkward F stuff, but definitely not a second date. Sniffed my socks I just took off. Though he says in front of my parents and grandparents are sweet nectar. I think I was the creep in this situation. I saw a post on Pinterest that was really cute and I wanted to replicate. A husband had attached photos on strings of him and his wife to balloons and let them dangle around the bed on the night of their anniversary. It looked very rustic and romantic. My replication wasn't. Hundreds of photos of me and my partner on strings, taped to the ceiling. Couldn't find a helium canister at short notice and dangling over the dining table where I had cooked us a meal. I lit some candles, turned out the lights, and waited for her to come home from uni. It was only when she walked in and asked if I was going to kill her did I realize how effing creepy the setup looked. Told him I wouldn't date him, so he rode his bike into the front of my truck while I was going like 5 miles per hour in a parking lot, dramatically threw himself over my hood and acted like he was dying so people would call 911. He thought he could guilt me into dating him. It didn't work. My boyfriend at the time made me a cake for my birthday but wouldn't let me share it with anyone because he made it for me. So I basically had to eat an entire birthday cake by myself. Very strange. I broke up with my boyfriend of 3 years in high school. His older sister drove to my house and asked me to sit in her car and talk about it. She was cool, so I did. After trying to persuade me to take him back and me strongly refusing, she tells me she has something for me in the trunk. We get out, go back and open the trunk, and he is in the trunk, crying and begging me to get back with him. I refused. Update: I broke up with him because he cheated on me. It was right before senior prom and I already had another date who is now my husband, so that turned out well. Backstory: in high school I was into the whole punk scene. I had the obligatory custom jacket with patches and rivets, the tall, Liberty spiked hair, and a nice 4-piece collection of tight, plaid pants. Anyway, this one broody half-punk/half goth girl took a liking to me one day. I noticed she was always staring at me from across the school, behind a table, whatever. I basically brushed her off. One day she comes to school wearing the same plaid pants as me. I was a little bit pissed. It was a small conservative school. Plaid pants were sort of my thing. People clearly noticed. Still, I brushed it off. The next day, she wears the same pants as me again, and these are in a different color. It's a bit uncanny. The process repeats for a couple weeks. I'm genuinely confused. People started asking if we did it on purpose. I have to face her. We get to talking, kind of laugh about it. It's all a strange style we share. Why we match 90% of the time is a mystery. We start hanging out every now and then. That's when I find out that she has all kinds of notes about me, as in, within a notebook. Charts out where I go, what I eat, what I wear. She has a calendar with actions that I repeat, that I never even realized. As it turns out, due to my wash schedule, we went to school in a dirt field with no changing rooms, so Peg got your day clothes incredibly dusty and muddy. I repeated the same color pants on the same days with pretty reliable frequency. She's a full-blown stalker. Anyway, we've been a couple since we were 14 years old, together for 14 years now, and married for 10 of those. Guess I like them crazy. Creating a detailed, well-researched, and totally accurate stalker's calendar. I had a girl in high school who had a crush on me. She also believed that she was like a fairy princess from another realm, and she had twin daughters there and ruled over it all or something. I didn't understand it then, and I definitely don't now. Long story short, she wound up telling me that she was stuck in our realm because she was giving her immortality up for my love. It was a nice thought, and I doubt someone will ever kiss eternal life away for me again. But definitely the creepiest and cringiest way someone's proved their love for me. Girlfriend stole my favorite book, put lipstick kisses and oil all over the maps and prologue. I had that book for years. Was certainly the reason we broke up. That and her death threats. My GF of 2 years in high school cheated on me, so I broke up with her. She became a complete stalker and would wait outside my house in her car about every day waiting for me to get home from school, practice, or just being out with friends on a Saturday night. One night I noticed her park down the street from my house. When I was pulling into my driveway, I opened the garage, drove in and immediately closed it once I knew my car was clear of the door. She effing ran from her car so fast to try and get in the garage before it closed. She dove under the garage door and slid on the floor just so she could have an attempt to spill her sob story again. I yelled for my parents to come down, which they did. My parents called my ex's parents telling them she was being crazy at our house and asked they come get her as she was crying hysterically and shouldn't drive. When her parents said they'd be right over, my ex excused herself to use the restroom. Fast forward 5 minutes, she comes out with her wrist dripping blood and tells my family and I we are the reason she hurts herself. She took my shaving razor apart in my bathroom and thought by hurting herself it would make me feel really bad for her and want to be with her again. Her parents immediately took her out of school and she was checked into a facility for about a month to help her cope with her issues. Edit. I always thought this story was freaking nuts and I'm glad I could share it with Reddit. This happened over 10 years ago and both of us have since moved on. The breakup really messed her up for a few years, but I personally think she had serious issues that were never resolved and everything hit the fan all at once for her. She developed an heroin addiction shortly after we broke up. She became the town bicycle and eventually went to a really intense drug rehab program for several months. I haven't stayed in contact with her, but I hear she has a new life now and appears to be doing better. I went on to college, dated a handful of girls after her, and am now married to the same girl I dated most of college. A 42-year-old woman tried to get me in the sack as proof of how much she loved me when I told her she was just a friend. I was 15. Edit. To the 12-year-olds asking if she was hot, go outside and maybe interact with some people your own age, preferably of whichever gender you have the hots for. The point isn't if she was hot. If she was good looking or not does not change the fact that a 42-year-old was trying to have sex with a 15-year-old. Reverse their genders and you have a travesty. But because the older one was a woman, people suddenly only care if a 15-year-old boy almost got with a hottie. I broke up with someone after he previously wouldn't accept the breakup, and he left a rose on my doorstep with a torn piece out of the Crow graphic novel that said my Valentine has hollow eyes. I had a girl in elementary school wear a pair of lamb pajamas on pajama day. My last name is Lamb, and wrote my first name all over her shirt. Had this drunken psycho girl come to my old apartment building to try and serenade me. She had forgotten what apartment I was in and ended up going to each apartment and playing outside their doors until someone finally called the cops. Not me, but a friend from school carved his girlfriend's name into his arm and was seriously upset and couldn't understand why she thought that was creepy. We were 14 when this happened, so I wasn't exactly much help. My ex and I used to share an apartment. When we split up, I broke up with him after he pulled some but that's another story. He moved in with his parents and I kept the place. He returned his key to me. I walked past the front door one day and noticed an envelope had been slid under the door at some point while I was home. The only thing written on it was my first name. I opened it. There was a very messy, clearly tear-stained letter wishing me a happy birthday and telling me how much I was missed. There were about 10 scratch-off lottery tickets for my birthday. Thing is, he was 2 weeks off on my birthday and had partially scratched off a few of the tickets. I know some of these stories are much worse, but it weirded me out. This is a story about me. So I went to college and was originally a writing major, but was never really invested in the degree. I had a lot of emotional issues in college, mostly with feeling worthless, and had a really hard time connecting with people. My second year, I met this guy and became really enthralled with him for some reason. I decided to switch majors so I could see him more, to biology. I would have pretty much the same classes with him for the rest of my time in college, but would barely say more than a few words to him. To say the least, nothing came of it, and I felt like the shyest, craziest person ever. Plot twist. Turns out, I'm really good at the sciences, won a few grants, and got a really great job now after college. My confidence grew, and it became easier for me to meet and understand appropriate relationships/boundaries. Second plot twist. The guy that I originally became obsessed with started working at my job. I actually avoided him because I was really embarrassed thinking about how I switched my major for this guy I barely knew. But one night, all of our co-workers went out for dinner, and we got to talking, and he invited me out on a date. Fast forward, we are getting married in 4 months. Yes, he does know about what I did, and he feels sympathetic for me, and doesn't judge me at all for it like I thought he would.